April 17th, 1945. Outside Bremen, northern Germany. Gunter Holtz lies flat in a drainage ditch, his face pressed into mud that smells of diesel and spring thaw, watching the Tiger II advance through the wreckage of what used to be Schulstrasse. The tank is enormous. 68 tons of steel moving at 15 kilometers per hour. Its 88mm main gun sweeping methodically across destroyed buildings. The long barrel catches afternoon light as it traverses, searching for targets that no longer exist. Behind the Tiger, somewhere in the smoke and rubble, German infantry are withdrawing toward the city center. Ahead of the Tiger, pressed into cellars and burned-out shops along a 200-meter stretch of road, 83 civilians wait to die. Gunter is 47 years old, a commercial fisherman who spent 3 decades hauling nets in the North Sea before British bombers turned Bremen's harbor into a crater field. He's not a soldier. He's not resistance. He's a man with calloused hands and a coil of 12mm steel cable who understands mechanical advantage, load distribution, and exactly how much force it takes to lift 400 kilograms of thrashing fish from ocean water into a boat hold. The Tiger grinds closer. 150 meters. Gunter can see the commander in the cupola, a young SS officer scanning rooftops through binoculars. The tank's tracks chew through cobblestones, leaving parallel gouges in pavement laid down in 1887. Each track is 800 millimeters wide, driven by a massive sprocket at the rear of the hull. The entire drivetrain, engine, transmission, final drive represents 15 tons of precisely engineered mechanical components that must work in perfect synchronization for the tank to move. Gunter knows something the SS commander doesn't. Every mechanical system has a single point of failure. For fishing boats, it's the net winch. Jam that mechanism, and 6 tons of steel cable becomes an anchor instead of a tool. For tracked vehicles, it's the drive sprocket. Lock that wheel, and 68 tons of armor becomes a stationary pillbox. He shifts position slightly, feeling the weight of the cable coiled beside him. It's net hoisting cable, salvaged from his boat Nordmeer, before British incendiaries burned her to the waterline. 40 meters of braided steel rated for 3,000 kilograms tensile strength. He's spent the last 6 hours rigging it across Schulstrasse, in a configuration the Tiger's commander will never see until it's far too late. The plan is insane. Gunter knows this. He's told himself a dozen times in the last hour that what he's attempting has maybe a 20% chance of working and an 80% chance of getting everyone in the cellars killed when the tank crew realizes they're under attack. But the mathematics are simple. The Tiger continues forward and reaches the intersection where Hauptstrasse crosses Schulstrasse. At that intersection, German engineers have prepared demolition charges. The entire city block will be destroyed, bringing down 4 apartment buildings where 83 civilians are sheltering because the stairwells collapsed and they can't evacuate. Or Gunter stops the Tiger here, now, using a technique he's employed 10,000 times to lift fish nets. The technique works because it exploits leverage and mechanical advantage in ways that make a single man stronger than the combined muscle of ship crews. He's about to prove that the same principles that lift salmon from the North Sea can immobilize a Tiger II tank. The Tiger is 100 meters away. Gunter wraps his hand around the cable release mechanism, a salvaged boat winch handle modified with a quick release pin. In 45 seconds, one of 3 things will happen. The Tiger's drive sprocket will jam, immobilizing the tank. The cable will snap, accomplishing nothing. Or the SS crew will identify the threat and machine gun everyone in the vicinity. Gunter has made his peace with all three possibilities. The morning they executed his son for desertion, shot him in the street in front of neighbors as an example. Gunter stopped caring about German victory. He started caring about mathematics, force multipliers, mechanical advantage. How much damage one man with the right knowledge can inflict on 68 tons of armor. The Tiger grinds forward 80 meters. Gunter can hear the transmission whining, the engine laboring under the tank's enormous weight. He can smell exhaust, hot metal, hydraulic fluid. He watches the tracks rotating, each individual link passing over the road wheels, rolling forward, cycling back around the drive sprocket. That sprocket is the key. It's a toothed wheel, 900 millimeters in diameter, mounted at the rear of the hull. It meshes with gaps in the track links, pulling the entire track assembly forward as the wheel rotates. The sprocket shaft is 80 millimeters thick, hardened steel, supported by bearings capable of handling enormous torque. It's designed to pull 68 tons of tank through mud, over obstacles, up slopes. It's not designed to resist lateral force applied directly to the teeth while under full load. Gunter's cable system will deliver exactly that force. He shifts his grip on the release handle. The Tiger is 60 meters away. He can see details now. The Zimmerit anti-magnetic paste coating the armor. The spare track links bolted to the glossus plate. Registration number 332, painted in white on the turret side. This particular Tiger belongs to Schwer Panzer, Abteilung 503, Heavy Tank Battalion 503, one of the last functional German armored units still fighting in northern Germany. Intelligence reports, the kind civilians hear through rumor and whispers, indicate that this Tiger is command tank for a company of Panthers withdrawing through Bremen. Stop this Tiger, and the entire company loses coordination. German armor doctrine depends on command tanks for tactical control. Without this Tiger, the Panthers become individual vehicles instead of a coordinated unit. But Gunter isn't thinking about tactical doctrine. He's thinking about Frau Kellerman and her 3 grandchildren in the cellar of Schulstrasse 47. About the Hoffmann family, 7 people, sheltering in a coal bunker that will collapse when the demolition charges detonate. About 83 civilians who've survived 4 years of British bombing only to die because a Tiger needs to blow up a city block for no strategic purpose except that Berlin ordered all bridges and infrastructure destroyed. 40 meters. The Tiger's engine pitch changes as the driver downshifts. The street here is choked with rubble from a collapsed facade. The tank slows to 8 kilometers per hour, carefully maneuvering around a crater where a 500-pound bomb hit 3 weeks ago. The commander is still scanning rooftops, still searching for Panzerfaust teams or British commandos. He's not looking at the street level. He's not watching for cables. Gunter's system is positioned perfectly. The cable runs across Schulstrasse at an angle, buried under 4 centimeters of loose rubble and ash. Both ends are anchored to structural points that Gunter selected after studying building foundations for 6 hours yesterday. The north anchor is a building foundation column, exposed by bomb damage, that extends 3 meters below street level. Solid brick and limestone mortared in 1889, designed to support a 5-story apartment building. It can handle lateral loads that would tear normal anchor points from the ground. The south anchor is even better. A cast iron water main, 400 millimeters in diameter, installed in 1912 and running 2 meters underground. The pipe is empty now. Water service to this district cut off since February. But the pipe itself is embedded in clay and gravel, supported by soil compaction from 33 years of settling. Gunter has wrapped 6 meters of cable around that pipe in a configuration that distributes load across the entire circumference. That anchor won't fail. Between these two anchor points, the cable runs in a shallow arc across the street. At the cable's midpoint, Gunter has installed a Norwegian rolling hitch, a knot configuration used by fishing boats to create mechanical advantage when hauling nets. The hitch connects to a secondary cable that runs back to Gunter's position in the ditch. This secondary cable passes through 3 pulleys, salvaged from his boat's net hoist system, creating a 6-to-1 mechanical advantage ratio. The physics are elegant. When Gunter pulls the secondary cable, the Norwegian hitch tightens on the main cable, pulling it upward. The main cable, anchored at both ends, forms a rising loop across the street. As the Tiger's tracks pass over the buried cable and the rear drive sprocket approaches, Gunter will pull the secondary cable. The loop will rise, catching the sprocket teeth, tightening as the tank tries to move forward. The tank's own forward momentum will pull the cable tighter, until either the cable snaps or the sprocket jams. If the sprocket jams, the track stops moving. The tank's engine will still be running, transmission engaged, trying to push 68 tons forward, but one track will be immobilized. The Tiger will pivot in place, unable to advance or retreat, completely vulnerable to close assault by infantry. If the cable snaps, Gunter and everyone in the cellars are dead. The Tiger will continue to the intersection. The demolition charges will detonate. 83 people die when the buildings collapse. 20 meters. Gunter wraps the secondary cable around his hand, feeling the braided steel bite into his palm through work gloves worn thin by 30 years of hauling nets. The gloves are the same ones he wore on Nordmeer, stained with fish blood and salt, the only equipment he salvaged before his boat burned. They're good gloves, double-stitched leather, designed for men who make their living with their hands. He's worn them through storms in the North Sea, through 16-hour fishing runs, through the kind of physical labor that turns hands into tools. Today, they'll protect his palms from steel cable friction when he pulls with every gram of strength his body can generate. The Tiger's front road wheels cross the buried cable. The commander doesn't notice. Why would he? There's nothing visible, just rubble and ash, the same debris that covers every street in Bremen. The tank keeps moving, slow but inexorable. Middle road wheels pass over the cable. Still nothing. The crew has no idea they're about to drive into a snare designed by a fisherman who spent 3 decades thinking about mechanical advantage. Gunter watches the rear drive sprocket approach the cable. He's calculating timing. The sprocket needs to be directly over the cable when he pulls. If he pulls too early, the cable rises. The sprocket rolls over it. Nothing happens. Too late, and the opportunity passes. He needs the exact moment when the sprocket teeth are positioned to engage the cable as it rises. He counts the track links passing. Each link is 840 millimeters long. The sprocket has 19 teeth. That means each tooth engages every 19th track link. Gunter watches. 1 link, 2, 3. The geometry is resolving. 4, 5, 6. The sprocket rotates at approximately 1 revolution per 2.8 seconds at the Tiger's current speed. 7, 8, 9. Almost there. The Tiger's engine note changes. The driver is applying throttle, preparing to accelerate once clear of the rubble. This is perfect. Maximum torque on the drivetrain means maximum force, pulling the cable tight when it engages. 10, 11, 12. Gunter thinks about his son. Friedrich, 19 years old, conscripted in 1943. Sent to the Eastern Front with the 291st Infantry Division. He survived Kursk, survived the retreat across Ukraine, made it all the way back to Germany in the winter of 1945, traumatized and exhausted. He refused to report to the Bremen garrison for reassignment, refused to keep fighting a war everyone knew was lost. The SS arrested him for desertion on March 3, 1945. They shot him on March 4th in Schulstrasse, 60 meters from where Gunter is lying right now. They made the neighborhood watch. They made Gunter watch his son die. 13, 14, 15. The SS officer who gave the execution order is probably already dead, killed by British artillery or Russian tanks. But the system that executed Friedrich is still functioning. Still killing. This tiger represents that system. Unstoppable armor, crushing everything in its path because that's what German doctrine demands. Fight to the last. Destroy everything. Make the enemy pay for every meter. 16, 17, 18. Gunter has spent 6 weeks planning this. Studying tank movements through Bremen. Identifying patterns. He noticed that tigers always follow the same routes, using streets wide enough for their bulk. He mapped those routes. He identified choke points, where tanks had to slow down for rubble or craters. He selected this location because the street geometry forces the tiger to pass directly over his anchor points at reduced speed. He salvaged equipment from Nordmeer's wreckage. The cable, the pulleys, the winch handle. He tested the Norwegian hitch configuration using progressively heavier loads, pulling concrete rubble across open ground until he was confident the knot would hold under extreme force. He calculated angles, load distributions, failure modes. He spent hours examining the underside of destroyed German armor, studying track assemblies, measuring sprocket dimensions, understanding exactly where mechanical advantage could be applied. This isn't sabotage. It's engineering. Gunter is doing what he's always done, solving mechanical problems using available tools and accumulated knowledge. The problem is 68 tons of Tiger II. The tools are 40 meters of steel cable and 3 pulleys. The knowledge is 3 decades of commercial fishing where understanding force and leverage means the difference between a successful catch and crushed equipment. 19. The rear drive sprocket crosses the cable line. Gunter can see the exact moment. The toothed wheel passes over the buried cable, rolling forward, maybe 30 centimeters clearance between the sprocket teeth and the rubble-covered pavement. The track is under tension, pulling tight as the tank's weight presses down on the road wheels. Gunter yanks the secondary cable. Hard. Using his entire body weight, dropping backward into the ditch, pulling the cable with the same motion he's used 10,000 times to hoist nets from the ocean. The Norwegian hitch responds instantly. The main cable rises, forming a loop that snaps upward into the gap between the drive sprocket and the hull. For 1 second, nothing happens. The Tiger continues rolling forward. The sprocket teeth mesh with the track links. The engine roars. Then physics engages. The cable catches 3 sprocket teeth simultaneously. The teeth, designed to pull track links forward, are now pulling against steel cable anchored to building foundations and a buried water main. The cable tightens. The sprocket tries to rotate. Can't. The track, still under full tension from the tank's weight, locks solid. The Tiger lurches. The entire 68-ton hull shifts as the left track stops moving while the right track continues. The tank begins pivoting, rotating left, the starboard track digging into pavement while the port track is frozen solid. Inside the tank, the crew feels the sudden deceleration. The driver's first instinct is correct. He releases the throttle, disengages the clutch, tries to shift to neutral. Too late. The transmission is already screaming, gears grinding as torque from the Maybach HL230 engine, 700 horsepower of industrial violence, tries to force the immobilized track forward. Something in the final drive housing makes a sound like a rifle shot. Metal fracturing under impossible load. The commander's voice cuts through the intercom, sharp with confusion. "Driver, what's happening? Why are we turning?" "Track's jammed, Herr Obersturmführer. Port side drivetrain, complete seizure." Gunter is already moving. He abandons the secondary cable, lets it fall slack into the ditch. The Norwegian hitch is doing its work. The Tiger's own weight and forward momentum have pulled the main cable so tight it's vibrating like a piano wire. He can see it now. A steel line cutting across the street at knee height, angled from the north foundation anchor to the south water main, passing directly through the Tiger's port drive sprocket assembly. The cable has wedged itself between the sprocket teeth and the hull armor, creating a mechanical bind that no amount of engine power can overcome. The Tiger's engine revs higher. The driver is trying to power through whatever obstacle has caught his track. This is exactly wrong. Every revolution of the drive shaft pulls the cable tighter, jamming it deeper into the sprocket mechanism. The starboard track continues churning, pivoting the tank in a slow circle. The long 88-millimeter barrel sweeping across building facades. Gunter sprints toward Schulstrasse 47, staying low, using rubble for cover. Behind him, he hears the Tiger's engine pitch change again. The driver has figured out that forward power isn't working. He's trying reverse. The transmission clunks into backing gear. The starboard track reverses direction. The port track, locked solid by Gunter's cable, doesn't move at all. The cable holds. Gunter risks a glance back. The Tiger is stationary now, engine idling, both tracks motionless. Smoke is rising from the port side final drive housing. The cable must have generated enough friction heat to ignite leaked lubricant or hydraulic fluid. Not enough to damage the tank seriously, but enough to tell the crew they have a critical mechanical failure. The commander's cupola hatch swings open. The SS officer emerges, standing in the opening, surveying his immobilized tank with an expression of pure disbelief. He's maybe 24 years old, blonde hair cut regulation short, the Knight's Cross visible at his throat. He's probably commanded this Tiger through a dozen battles, from the Eastern Front to here, the final defense of Germany. He's faced Soviet T-34s, American Shermans, British Churchills. He's never been stopped by a fishing net cable. "Dismount," he shouts to his crew. "Check the port track assembly. Something's fouled the sprocket." The driver's hatch opens. A heavy-set man in oil-stained coveralls drops to the pavement, circling toward the rear of the tank. He stops when he sees the cable, mouth opening in shock. "Herr Obersturmführer, someone's rigged a wire trap. The sprocket's completely bound." The commander's head snaps toward Gunter's position. Not directly at Gunter, but scanning the rubble field, the destroyed buildings, searching for whoever set the trap. His hand moves to the Walter P-38, holstered at his hip. Gunter is inside the cellar entrance of Schulstrasse 47 before the pistol clears leather. He drops down concrete steps into darkness that smells of damp earth and terrified humanity. 47 people are pressed into a space designed for coal storage. Frau Kellerman clutches her grandchildren. The Hoffman family huddles against the far wall. A dozen faces turn toward Gunter, white with fear in the dimness. "Stay down," Gunter says quietly. "Don't make noise." The tank is stopped, but the crew is outside. "Did you?" Herr Hoffman starts. "Stay down." Above them, boots on pavement, German voices shouting. The commander is organizing his crew, trying to assess the situation. Gunter can hear fragments of conversation through the cellar's ventilation grate. "Cables military grade, Herr Obersturmführer. Braided steel. Very strong. Cut it? Can we cut it free? Not without tools. It's wrapped through the sprocket teeth, under tension. We'd need bolt cutters at minimum, probably an acetylene torch. How long to bring up engineer support?" A pause. Then the driver's voice, uncertain. "Sir, our radio reports position Schulstrasse, near the Hauptstrasse intersection. Pioneer units are 4 kilometers west. Given current British artillery, probably 90 minutes to get a recovery team here." "We don't have 90 minutes. British forward elements could advance into this sector any time." Another voice, the gunner, maybe. "Could we destroy the cable with the coaxial MG? Shoot it free?" "The angle's wrong. The cable's wrapped under the sprocket, against the hull. We'd be shooting at our own armor." Gunter permits himself a small, grim smile. The Tiger's crew is discovering what he learned decades ago on fishing boats. Once steel cable, under tension, gets wrapped around a rotating mechanism, removing it requires either cutting tools or disassembly. You can't shoot it free. You can't pull it loose by hand. The only way to clear it is to stop, release all tension, and carefully work the cable out of whatever mechanism it's fouled. For a fishing boat winch, that means 30 minutes of work with proper tools. For a Tiger's Drive sprocket, probably 2 hours minimum, assuming you have a full toolkit and a recovery vehicle to lift the track clear. The commander's voice again, harder now. "Leitner, take Bauer. Sweep the building's north side. Whoever rigged this is close. Find them." Footsteps moving away. 2 men, probably carrying MP-40 submachine guns, searching for saboteurs. Gunter presses himself against the cellar wall beside the entrance steps. If the Germans come down here, if they start clearing cellars, this ends badly for everyone. 47 civilians plus Gunter, in a confined space with no exit. The SS will assume they're all partisans, or sheltering resistance fighters. But the Germans don't know which building the cable anchors are in. They don't know which cellar. Bremen is 60% destroyed. There are hundreds of ruins, thousands of potential hiding spots. 2 men can't search them all. Not quickly. Not with British forces possibly advancing into the area. Frau Kellerman's youngest grandchild, maybe 6 years old, starts to cry. A tiny sound, quickly muffled by her hand over his mouth, but sound carries in urban rubble. Gunter tenses. The grandmother rocks the child gently, desperately trying to keep him quiet. The boy's sobs are soft but persistent, the fear too much for his small body to contain silently. Above, the footsteps stop. One of the German soldiers has heard something. "Leitner, this building. Ground floor. Basement access. Looks like. Over here." Gunner's hand moves to his belt. He's carrying a fish-gutting knife, 20-centimeter blade, razor sharp because dull tools are dangerous tools, and Gunner has maintained his equipment meticulously for 30 years. It's not a combat weapon. It's designed for cutting through fish flesh and cartilage, not fighting soldiers with submachine guns. But it's what he has. The cellar entrance darkens, a silhouette backlit by afternoon sun. MP-40 barrel swinging down, searching the darkness. The soldier takes one step down the concrete stairs. Then the world explodes. Not literally, but the sound is close. A massive detonation from the east, from Hauptstrasse, maybe 200 meters away. The shock wave rattles through ruined buildings, shaking dust from the cellar ceiling. The soldier on the stairs freezes, then scrambles back up to street level. Leitner! That's the demolition charges. The engineers are blowing the Hauptstrasse intersection. But we're still here. They weren't supposed to detonate until we cleared the area. Someone triggered them early, or the timer malfunctioned. Move! We need to get back to the tank. Footsteps running. The voices fade. Gunter counts to 30, then carefully climbs the stairs. He peers over street level. The Tiger sits exactly where he left it. Port track still frozen. Cable still tight. But the two soldiers have abandoned their search, sprinting toward the tank where their commander is shouting orders into a handheld radio. Negative, negative! We are immobilized. Require immediate engineer support. Position Schulstrasse, 200 meters west of Hauptstrasse intersection. Do not, repeat, do not detonate remaining charges until we're extracted. The radio squawks back. Gunter can't hear the words, but he can read the commander's expression. Whatever response he's getting, it's not what he wants to hear. Understood. Out. The commander lowers the radio. He looks at his crew, his immobilized Tiger, the destroyed street around them. When he speaks, his voice has the flat affect of a man making an unthinkable decision. Battalion command has ordered general withdrawal. British armor is advancing faster than anticipated. All remaining forces are pulling back to secondary defensive positions. There's no recovery team available. Sir, what are our orders? Abandon the vehicle. Demolish the main gun. Rejoin the company on foot. The driver stares. Abandon 332? Sir, this is a command tank. I'm aware of what it is. I'm also aware that an immobilized tank is a liability, not an asset. Prepare demolition charge for the gun breach. We have 10 minutes. The commander turns, surveying the street one final time. His gaze passes over the rubble pile where Gunter is hidden. For a moment, their eyes seem to meet. Then the commander looks away. The crew works quickly. They've clearly practiced this procedure. Destroy sensitive equipment when capture is imminent. The gunner disappears into the turret, emerging 2 minutes later with what looks like a shaped charge. He climbs onto the rear deck, opens an access panel, places the charge inside the gun mounting mechanism. The radio operator salvages code books, stuffs them into a bag. The driver collects personal gear, a photograph, a letter, small things that soldiers carry. The commander takes one last look at his Tiger. He reaches up, touches the hull armor almost gently. This tank has kept him alive through how many battles? How many kilometers from the east to here? Now he's leaving it. A 68-ton monument to Germany's industrial might, immobilized by a fisherman's cable. Clear the vehicle. Charge detonates in 5 minutes. Move out. The 4 crewmen trot west down Schulstrasse, MP40 slung, heading toward whatever remains of their company. They don't look back. Within 30 seconds, they've disappeared around a corner, swallowed by Bremen's ruins. Gunter waits until the charge detonates. The explosion is sharp, focused. When the smoke clears, the Tiger's main gun barrel is split like a flower, the breech mechanism destroyed. The tank is now officially combat ineffective, a pillbox without a working weapon. But it's still blocking Schulstrasse, still preventing German forces from using this route for withdrawal. And more importantly, it's nowhere near the Hauptstrasse intersection where the demolition charges have already detonated. He returns to the cellar. It's done. The tank crew is gone. The British We'll be here soon. Frau Kellerman looks at him with tears streaming down her face. You stopped them. You stopped the tank. I stopped one tank. You saved us. All of us. The demolition charges at Hauptstrasse, if the tank had reached there. Gunter shakes his head. I'm going to check the other cellars. Make sure everyone knows it's safe to stay put until British forces arrive. He climbs the stairs before anyone can thank him further. He doesn't want thanks. He wants his son back. He wants Nordmeer afloat in the North Sea. He wants the last 5 years erased. But he'll settle for 83 people who get to see tomorrow. Over the next 4 hours, British forces from XXX Corps advance into this sector of Bremen. They find the immobilized Tiger, cable still wrapped through its drive sprocket, and immediately halt to assess the threat. Combat engineers approach cautiously, expecting booby traps or stay-behind troops. They find neither. Just an abandoned Tiger II, with a destroyed main gun and a length of steel cable wrapped so tightly through the port drive sprocket that they eventually give up trying to remove it. They blow the entire track assembly off with demolition charges, rendering the tank completely unrepairable. A British intelligence officer photographs the cable setup. He traces it back to the anchor points, the foundation column, the buried water main. He examines the Norwegian hitch, the pulley system, the mechanical advantage configuration. He writes in his report, German tank immobilized by improvised cable snare system, possibly civilian sabotage. Degree of technical sophistication suggests professional knowledge of mechanical systems and load-bearing capabilities. Recommend investigation for similar techniques in other sectors. But by the time British occupation authorities begin looking for the person who stopped Tiger 332, Gunter is gone. He doesn't stay in Bremen. There's nothing for him here except memories of Friedrich's execution and the ashes of his boat. He walks north, toward the coast, toward fishing villages that might need someone who understands nets and cables and the sea. He doesn't talk about the Tiger. Not to British interrogators who question him briefly at a checkpoint. Not to other refugees on the roads. Not to anyone. It was a thing that needed doing. He had the knowledge. He had the tools. The mathematics worked. That's all. What Gunter doesn't know, what he can't possibly know, as he walks away from Bremen in late April 1945, is that his cable snare technique is about to become a classified study subject for Allied military engineers. The British intelligence report circulates. American tank destroyer units request copies. Someone at 1st Canadian Army Headquarters reads it and has questions. How much tensile strength is required? What anchor point specifications are necessary? Can the technique be standardized for training partisan forces? By June 1945, with Germany surrendered and occupation forces securing territory, a U.S. Army Engineer Battalion conducts field tests. They obtain Tiger and Panther tanks from captured stocks. They manufacture cable snares using specifications reverse-engineered from Gunter's setup. They run the tanks through the snares at various speeds. Success rate, 73% complete immobilization, 22% partial track damage, 5% cable failure. Better than expected. Far better than conventional anti-tank obstacles like dragon's teeth or ditches. A technical manual is drafted. Improvised cable snare systems for tracked vehicle immobilization. It includes diagrams that look remarkably similar to Norwegian rolling hitches and pulley configurations used by commercial fishing operations. The manual circulates to Allied occupation forces, then disappears into classified archives, where it sits for 40 years gathering dust because by 1946, everyone is focused on peacetime reconstruction, and nobody expects to be fighting tanks with fishing cables again. But in Bremen, on Schulstrasse, something remarkable happens in the immediate aftermath. The 83 civilians who sheltered in the cellars emerge when British troops secure the area. They see the immobilized Tiger, the destroyed gun barrel, the cable still wrapped tight through the drive sprocket. They understand, in a way that British intelligence officers never fully will, that someone with profound mechanical knowledge saved their lives. Frau Kellerman tells her story to neighbors. The quiet fisherman who appeared in the cellar, who told them to stay silent, who disappeared up the stairs while German soldiers searched the street. The Hoffman family adds details. How they heard no gunfire, no explosions, just the Tiger's engines suddenly screaming in mechanical distress. How the tank crew abandoned their vehicle without ever finding whoever set the trap. The story spreads through Bremen's survivor community. Within a week, 24 people claim they know the fisherman's name. Gunter Holtz used to work the North Sea boats. Lost his son to an SS execution squad in March. Lost his boat to British incendiaries. A man with nothing left except knowledge and a coil of salvaged cable. By May 1945, Bremen's provisional civilian government, operating under British military oversight, begins documenting civilian resistance actions during the final weeks of the war. They're collecting testimony, building a record of how ordinary Germans opposed the Nazi regime in its death throes. A clerk named Hans Dietrich, himself a survivor of Schulstrasse, submits a detailed report about the Tiger incident. He includes witness statements from 31 of the 83 survivors. He describes the cable system in mechanical detail, having examined it personally before British engineers demolished the tank. The report reaches a British civil affairs officer, Major Thomas Pritchard, whose peacetime profession is engineering. Pritchard reads the description of the cable snare and immediately understands what he's looking at. This isn't amateur sabotage. This is professional-grade mechanical engineering applied to military problems. He requests permission to locate Gunter Holtz for questioning. Not for prosecution, the man clearly acted to save civilian lives, but for technical debriefing. The British Army would very much like to understand how a commercial fisherman immobilized a Tiger II using equipment that cost approximately £0 sterling. But Gunter has vanished. He's not in Bremen. He's not registered at any refugee processing center. His name appears on no Allied detention lists, no employment rosters, no ration distribution records. He's become invisible, one of millions of displaced Germans, moving through the ruins of their country in the spring of 1945. Major Pritchard eventually gives up the search. He files his engineering analysis of the cable snare system. He notes in his conclusion, "Subject demonstrates that anti-armor operations need not require expensive, specialized weapons. Given sufficient mechanical knowledge and available materials, improvised solutions can achieve results comparable to purpose-built military equipment." Implications for partisan operations and asymmetric warfare merit further. 3 years later, in a fishing village 80 kilometers north of Bremen, a boat captain named Gunter Holtz will hire a 16-year-old apprentice and teach him to rig net hoists with Norwegian rolling hitches, never once mentioning that the same knot configuration once stopped 68 tons of German armor in 45 seconds, because some knowledge is meant for hauling fish, and what it does beyond that is simply what the moment required.